We live in a day and age where you no longer have to fear someone walking in on you while you're watching anime. Hey, Rav, I just had a question about... Wait, are you watching anime? Yeah? Hell yeah! Hell yeah! Anime has been skyrocketing in popularity. This is undoubtedly the best time to be an anime fan. Shows like Demon Slayer are setting the bar for animation. Anime movies are getting full, proper theater screenings, and it's awesome. Anime is officially cool, and I don't have to worry about being lumped in with the weird kid in the corner of computer class wearing cat ears and researching Neon Genesis Evangelion lore anymore. I can have a mini monitor inside my computer dedicated strictly to REM and not get made fun of. Your waifu sucks! Alright, who the f said that? I'm Ravioli, I make videos about video games, and today we're playing my favorite anime. Now the real goal here is to find out if any of these games are actually worth checking out as fans of these series. Do they add anything substantial to the worlds these authors have built, or are they just produced as a means to cash in on these series' success? You know how it is with these licensed games.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
Denji, left with crippling debt from his parents to the Yakuza, has been selling body parts, living on the streets, and eating scraps just to survive. After getting full-on murdered, he forges a pact with his chainsaw dog Pochita, replacing his heart with Pochita himself and thus becoming Chainsaw Man. After meeting Makima, a highly ranked public safety devil hunter, he's offered a job and food and board as long as he obeys his orders. Denji, finally living the life he's always dreamed of, is left wanting a little bit more. An ambition greater than wanting a hot meal and a bed to sleep in arises within him. I want to touch some boobs. Hey, intern. What is this? That is the gameplay you asked for, sir. No, it's not. Yeah, you asked for, Chainsaw Ma'am gameplay. How do you get dressed in the morning? One pant leg at a time, sir. Everyone knows Berserk, right? One of the greatest manga of all time.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
Claymore is my go-to, I finished Berserk, what do I read next? Manga suggestion. Badass, cold-hearted, but actually a softy protagonists, big swords, dark pasts. There's a lot of similarities between Claymore and Berserk. But aside from the vibe, the story of Claymore is very different. Claire is a half-Yoma, half-human hybrid known as a Claymore. Basically, her job is to hunt Yoma, human-eating, shape-shifting monsters. Things get interesting when we learn that Claymores themselves can awaken their Yoma powers, thus becoming threats to the organization to which they once belonged. Seriously, this is such an underrated manga. If you like dark fantasy and you haven't read this, then you are truly missing out. I was actually pretty surprised to find out a Claymore game even existed. And unfortunately, the game is pretty bad. This is kind of what I feared most of the games in this video would end up being like. A huge draw of Claymore is the highly detailed otherworldly creatures. Just look, there's a person coming out of the thing's boobs. The problem is these cool creatures don't make an appearance until you get a little ways into the manga, and the same goes for the game. Claymore is interesting because of the story, and the game just doesn't reflect that. It kinda just feels like any other Nintendo DS family of systems action platformer with boring enemies like wolves and zombies. The bosses do get cooler later on, but it's so lackluster I didn't even have the patience to get there. Fight the power! Gurren Lagann is one of the manliest, most ludicrous, over-the-top anime out there. Kamina, with dreams of leaving his underground village for the surface, constantly spouts ridiculous idealisms, diving headfirst into whatever wall blocks his path, and doing so purely with the power of fighting spirit. It's hilarious, colorful, and insane, but still keeps you wondering what the hell is gonna happen next. So a Gurren Lagann game should be just as wild as this, right?
Let's see you grit those teeth!
And this one falls a little bit flat too. You get to walk around in Gurren and play little mini games to attack. I haven't seen any game like it, so that's kind of neat, but I was expecting a little more pizzazz from a show as over the top as Gurren Lagann. At least in this case, the game was clearly inspired by the show and tried its best to encompass the same feeling. I didn't finish this or the Claymore game, they just weren't very fun and didn't add a whole lot to the source material, but it was kind of cool seeing what this developer thought a Gurren Lagann game should be like. Kei Korono, who's a total piece of doo-doo, and Masaru Kanto, who is the nicest guy you'll ever meet, save a homeless man from committing seppuku with a train, and in turn end up committing accidental seppuku with a train. I shake my fist at you, drains. That's a little joke about the last video. But wait, they wake up in an apartment with a giant wizard's orb that sends them on missions to hunt aliens, and this chick's naked, and this guy's invisible, and there's a man inside the wizard's orb. They all get matching BDSM costumes, and there's a dog. Not a lot happening, really. The main important part of Gantz the game is the dog. There's two very important tells as to whether a game is good or not. One is, can you see your feet? If yes, it's a good game. And two, can you pet the dog? If yes, it's a good game. There are a couple nuances to this. For example, if a game has a dog that you cannot pet, but you can feed, then it still counts as a good game. You can also transcend this ruling system by naming the dog f***ing Rice and letting you party up with it. Jokes aside, the game itself did a pretty good job getting across the unique feeling of Gantz. The gameplay and the soundtrack reflected it fairly well, and they seemed to cover the plot quite closely, at least from what I read with my Google Translate app. But trying to help the homeless who fell home. This guy is for me. I asked for help. As prompted by this guy, I went home and helped the homeless. So, I picked it up. I was able to help the homeless. After that, I and this guy were hit by the train that came into the platform. I really didn't get that far into the game. This boss's gimmick was hiding under the water and boring the shit out of you, so I called it quits. It was also mostly just a retelling of the manga, and I can't read Japanese, but it was at least neat enough to check it out. If there is one anime game that is worth checking out, it's gotta be a game based on one of the greatest manga of all time. In an effort to keep this video monetized, I may or may not have tweaked the plot here. But anyways, Guts is a traveling magician who specializes in the sawing my assistant in half trick. But here's the catch. Everyone wants to be his assistant. Pretty much Berserk is one of the greatest manga ever made, and its dark fantasy setting had a lot of influence on the Dark Souls series. So when I found out Berserk had a couple games of its own, I thought it would be really interesting to check one of them out and see if it was any good. After all, I love a good sawing my assistant in half trick.
Mom! Aiden cut me in half again!
Believe it or not, the very first Berserk game was released on the Dreamcast the same year as Croc 2, 1999. Up until now, I had never played a Dreamcast game, but Sword of the Berserk Guts' Rage kind of blew me away. The game is fully voiced, the emulator I used did a fantastic job upscaling the visuals, and it felt like they were a bit ahead of their time in the cinematic storytelling department. Even the gameplay itself was pretty neat and very much felt like an early Souls-like. Guts' sword even bounces off walls if you're too close to them, a mechanic that I can't help but assume was directly stolen for Dark Souls. For the most part, despite the game being a bit technically dated, aka the controls f***ing suck, it was pretty sick. You had some basic combos, tore down hordes of enemies, and progressed from checkpoint to trigger cutscenes. The game was even written by the manga's author, Kentaro Miura, who unfortunately passed away before Berserk got a full conclusion, so it was nice being able to experience a little bit more of the story, even if it's not the most complicated arc out there. These knights looked like these 90s toys I used to play with, the voice acting was actually decent.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
Huh?
You blew it!
And to make things even better, it had a little doggy in it. Now, you don't get to pet the dog, and he isn't technically part of your party, but you do get to follow him around for part of the game, so that would fall in with the pettable dogs criteria as one of those little nuances I talked about. The main thing that sucked about it was the gameplay was nowhere near accurate enough to the source material. There was no way it would take Guts more than one swing to kill these enemies. Also, it was like playing Dark Souls with zero poise. Every single attack from enemies, big or small, staggered you, so the several homeboys with crossbows standing across the room could stagger you while the guy in front of you stabbed you repeatedly. At times, it felt like getting ganked was just unavoidable. You had to make sure to really space yourself, which would have worked great if not for the weird dodging system and the delay between dodging and turning back around to attack in the correct direction. I felt like I was swinging facing the wrong way a lot because Guts took his sweet ass time to turn around. But despite all the goofy running animations, It was really fun to play through as a Berserk fan. If you like Berserk, I highly recommend giving it a playthrough on easy mode just to experience more of the Berserk world and story. There were some really fun surprises for fans of the series, and it only took about 5 hours to beat. Well, we did it. We found an anime game that actually adds some value to its source material. Thanks for watching. Let me know what some of your favorite anime games in the comments are, and next time we'll be doing an in-depth analysis of every single episode of One Piece. Alright, I gotta get back to teaching the intern about Evangelion. In the beginning, there was a group of godlike aliens called the first ancestral race that created the seeds of life known as Adam and Lilith. Each of them came with their own eggs.